Serverless isn't just about programming models. It can also be infrastructure. Virtual nodes enable you to deploy containers at scale more rapidly into AKS without worrying about your cluster size. Brendan Burns is here to show us how today on Azure Friday. Hey everyone, Donovan Brown here with another episode of Azure Friday. I'm here with Brendan Burns and we're going to be talking about virtual nodes. So virtual nodes, tell me what these are about.
Well, you know, with Kubernetes, traditionally, the entire system has been built on top of virtual machines. So you have virtual machines to run the API servers, all of the control plane components. You have virtual machines that are running the worker nodes. But you know, when you're using a Kubernetes API, you actually are really just thinking about containers, and you're thinking about the control plane API. You don't really care about the virtual machines. In many cases, they're actually a liability. You have to patch them. You have to worry about, you know, is the operating system that, you know, is approved for compliance or whatever else. And so with Azure, what we're really trying to do is make the Kubernetes experience as serverless as possible.
Yeah, because I was always concerned too when I was building it, like how many nodes do I need? And here I am trying to figure out how many workloads I'm going to need, and that becomes a pain point for me. Is figuring out, should it be 4, 5, 6, and am I getting too many, or is this a nightmare?
Yeah, it's definitely the case. That's one of the things I think serverless enables you to do beyond just not thinking about the operating system, is actually to not necessarily have to think about scale.
Gotcha.
Right? You know, whether you're overpaying by buying too many virtual machines, or you're worried that if there's a burst of traffic, you might have underscaling, or you know, maybe it's that your developers go home at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, and they leave a virtual machine running all night, and you're paying for it while they're not working. There's a lot of reasons why you want to be able to have a Kubernetes cluster where you can scale with elasticity and only pay when the containers are running, and that's what virtual nodes enables.
Perfect.
So if you take a look, as we bring serverless into Azure Kubernetes Service, we run the master control plane for you.
Yep.
It's a serverless control plane. With virtual nodes, we replace a bunch of your worker nodes, the elastic part of your pool, with serverless containers. We're still in the process of making it Kubernetes fully serverless. It wasn't built with serverless in mind.
Sure.
And so there are still some places where you need virtual machines, and so we still see customers running both virtual machines and virtual nodes. But our long-term trajectory is towards nothing but virtual nodes and serverless everywhere.
Got it. So as of today, you can start adding virtual nodes to your existing cluster, but there might be scenarios where you're still going to need those VMs to be able to mount disk or to be able to sit behind a load balancer or something like that.
Yeah. So you need a few nodes to act as sort of bastion inputs for the load balancer.
Okay.
And then Azure Container Instances, which powers the virtual nodes, doesn't support Azure Disk today.
Gotcha.
All these things are being developed.
Perfect.
But if you need Azure Files, it works with the serverless containers.
Got it. So in the future, what we're hoping to have is AKS completely serverless, where all I have is a control plane that is controlled by Microsoft and a virtual node that's going to be the target for all my workloads.
That's exactly right, and that is definitely the North Star.
Awesome.
Because I think that's what people want. They want to focus on containers and leave the running of the infrastructure to us.
Perfect. And then I don't have to pay for those ones that were running 24/7 simply because I needed them behind a load balancer. Now all of a sudden I only pay for them when I need them.
Exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll take a look at what this looks like. I wanted to mention, of course, also that serverless actually extends beyond the Kubernetes API itself. It extends to things like Azure Monitor with our container insights, container registry, really trying to make sure that there are no virtual machines anywhere for you as much as we can.
Yeah, because I remember when I started playing with ACR, I didn't realize that I could actually have ACR build the image for me too. I always thought of ACR as just a place where I store it, but you can actually say, no, go build it, go do everything.
No, you can do your developer, you can do the whole thing in Azure Cloud Shell. You have a serverless shell, you have a serverless Kubernetes, serverless everything, right? Yes. And I think that is most people, I think for most people, the ability to just do it from a web browser, to do it from an environment where I can throw it away and find the next environment, it's really optimal.
Cool. Right? So let's see how it works.
All right, cool. Let's take a look. All right, cool. So we're going to take a look at a Kubernetes cluster in AKS with virtual nodes attached. The first thing we can look at here is the nodes. And this is using the VS Code extension, but the same commands are available with kubectl on the command line. In fact, that's what's being used under the hood. But
got it.
Prettier visualization and all that. And what you see here is we've got 3 nodes backed with a VMSS and a virtual node here. Okay. What's interesting about the virtual node is you're never going to have more than one for any particular operating system. You might have one for Windows and one for Linux, but you don't need to add more nodes to add more scale.
Got it.
The containers just go into that node and it just grows effectively. It's virtual anyway, but it grows in order to accommodate new containers.
Perfect.
I got a deployment over here, and we can take a look at this deployment. and it's got 3 pods running inside that deployment. And if I say, I want to scale up, right? I'm going to come along here, and I'll take this to 4, and then we'll apply that. This shows off a little bit of the extension as well. It actually is just showing me the difference that I'm going to do. So it's highlighting the replicas from 3 to 4. Okay. So I can choose to apply that. Now I'm going to try and scale up to 4. And we've scaled up now. And what you can see here is I have my 3 pods running, but the new one, the scale up one, is stuck in pending. Yeah. And the reason it's stuck in pending is because I've used up all the capacity on my physical machines.
Yeah, but you have, when we were over there, you showed me that you actually had a virtual node, so I would have expected that one just to start running on that one.
Right, so we've actually made a design decision here with the product which says that as an end user, you need to explicitly opt into using virtual nodes.
Okay, so even though it's a part of my cluster, that's not enough. It's not just adding one, it's also adding one and saying, I also now want to use that.
Right, so Kubernetes has this notion of what's called taints and tolerations, and basically it's a way of saying, like, this node has a little bit of a difference or something like that, right? And then you have to say, well, I tolerate that difference. And if I do, then I'll get scheduled onto that, and if I don't. It could be used for something like, hey, we think the memory might be slightly bad, or a disk went bad. But in this case, it's saying, hey, the infrastructure is a little different. You should know that you're getting scheduled out into this ACI, because of course, you could imagine, well, I created a cluster, and it costs 3 virtual machines, and it's a fixed cost. With virtual nodes, if you scale really big, you're going to start paying more. Gotcha. And that's maybe a little bit different than what somebody's expecting, so we want to make sure that a user explicitly said, I want that.
Right? Perfect, got it. And so that's where we are now, is that we have the node, but we haven't told our cluster to use that node yet.
Right, and we have to add an annotation. And so we'll go back over here, and we will close all, and then get my files. So if we take a look at this one, what you can see here is I've added this.
Got it. So this is the same deployment you had before with just this portion added to it.
Right. It's the same deployment, but this little portion gets added, which basically says I'm going to tolerate the fact that I'm a virtual kubelet, and that's going to allow me to then schedule.
Perfect. Okay.
Right? And so if I now go, well, this one has, I'm going to change that to 4 also.
Okay.
So if I apply this, there's a lot of differences. The cluster has. When you create something in the Kubernetes cluster, it adds like the creation timestamp and all this kind of stuff, but it should just work.
Okay.
So now let's see what happened. If I go back over and I search for any pending pods, they're all gone. And so that last pod has been scaled out to the virtual node now. And obviously I can go even bigger if I want. I could scale up to 10. I could scale up to the number of virtual containers that I can add to my subscription. So.
I see. Yeah. So we're no longer bound by the nodes that we have, which we talked about earlier. My biggest concern is I either have too few or too many nodes, and now I have always just the right amount of nodes because I can burst out, and then it'll shrink back in.
Right.
Whenever
and you're only paying for the containers that you have active, not the node itself. The virtual node is always free.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Perfect. Cool. All right. So we're learning all about virtual nodes here on Azure Friday.